The question is it really necessary to go to church in 2019? I think the place to start would be what we mean by necessary, because some people might hear that question or hear any question that involves faith or religion and think what they're really saying is, do you have to go to church to go to heaven, or do you have to go to church to for God to be on your side? And the answer to that question is clearly no. You do not have to go to church to be right with God. And even going to church is not the right way of saying that, because here's the definition of the church is every person that is connected to Jesus, that's been forgiven and is committed to following Jesus. And so church is people. And so what we've done is we've called the thing where people get together and meet and worship, we've called that church, but really people are the church, not an event or not a service. So it's really not a great question to start with. So maybe we could rephrase it this way: is to be a healthy follower of Jesus, is it necessary in 2019 to go to a gathering of believers to worship, to celebrate, and to teach and to learn what we in our culture call church? It's sort of a tricky question, because the reason I put in 2019 was this. There's a lot of things associated with church that you can do online. And so, in fact, it's a big movement. And there's this big debate, in Christian circles, is if somebody just watches online and they somehow participate in conversations online, is that the same thing as going to church? So I want to give you a few reasons why I would say yes, and then I'll give you a few reasons why I would say, well, maybe we ought to think about it. One is this, is that, it's if we get teaching, if we get sound teaching and preaching that encourages us, that points us toward Jesus, that opens our eyes up more and more to who we are, who God is, and what we're meant to do with our lives, and it happens to come through a computer screen, that's still good. I preach on Sunday mornings, like most Sunday mornings. And so one of the temptations is, as preachers or teachers, so we live in our own little bubble of our church, right? In our local church, our local group of followers of Jesus. And so one of the temptations is for us to think, because maybe we're the main speaker in our local bubble, that we're the only qualified person to speak about these things. But in reality, God has gifted a lot of people that can really give great insight into different things, and He's given them great gifts. And many of the people that He's given great gifts do not live in the same city as you, or don't go in your church. So, man, I love to hear that people in my church are watching and listening to great preaching and teaching online, because it's not about them hearing from me. It's about them growing in their walk and their following Jesus, growing into the human beings they're meant to be. And there's lots of people that God's gifted with those tools and abilities to do that. And so, man, if somebody listens to preaching and teaching online, can somebody get saved listening to preaching and teaching online? Yes. Can somebody get encouraged? Yes. Can we get convicted about things in our life that are not the way they're supposed to be by listening to something online, listening to preaching online? Yes. So we should fully embrace that. We should absolutely embrace the fact that if all church is teaching and preaching and hearing, then that can be done online. And preachers and teachers, I got bad news for you. For us, a little humility here, is that can probably be done online better than in person, because there's probably people that do a better job than you and me at teaching whatever it is we're talking about. So, yes. Online, this is something new, fairly new, 10 years ago wouldn't have been the case necessarily, is online you can have a sense of community online. There's the Facebook groups app, there's different almost like message board type deals where you can have community in a service. In fact, in some ways online you can have more community or more dialogue, live dialogue, than you can have in person. Because if you're in person in a church service, then you probably, the cultural norms is that you sort of sit there and pay attention, and that you let the speaker do most of the speaking, depending on what denomination you come from. The audience participates some, but mostly it's that person speaking. When you're in a group online, you can comment as it goes. You can say, yeah, that's great, or yeah, I've got a question about this, or man, that really applies to me. And you can comment and have live dialogue as you go online. So that's really cool. That's a positive. So there's a couple things that are positive, that yes, you do not have to come to church. You do not have to physically go to a church service to get great teaching, and you do not physically have to go to a church service in order to have dialogue with people that's so important about what God's speaking to you about, like real time as it's happening. So there's some reasons that you don't have to go to, like you don't really have to go to church, but some reasons, some things you could do at home. Now, there are some reasons to like physically go to church. One is this, is it's hard to serve anybody else from the comfort of your chair in front of your computer. And so if you physically go to church, you can serve people. Even if you're not volunteering, you can encourage people. You can open doors for people. You can say, hey, how are you doing? Like, how's your week? I'm glad to see you here. And you say, well, that's stupid. That's not really important. Well, you don't know what the person sitting next to you has gone through that week. And you don't know their background. Maybe they're in a place in life where nobody acts like they're glad to see them, but because you physically got up and went to church, you can look at them and you can act like, because you are, that you're glad to see them. You can let them know, and you have no idea the difference that can make. Like there's single moms that need to come to church and have somebody watch their child so that they can have their only adult time of the week that's not like super busy and crazy. And you can't watch other people's children from home. You can't serve people from home. So a reason to come together is to serve. Some other reasons to come together. There's something really cool about celebrating the cross and the empty tomb together in the same room. So that's something. You can do that online, but it's just something cool about doing it in person together. And another reason that maybe going to church, physically going to church, is still important, even with all the technology we have and all the resources we have, is this, is that by having, so what if all of us quit going to church and we said, okay, we're going to have like the 5 best preachers and we're going to put them online and everybody watches online and we don't have to go to church. Well, okay, so you could get great teaching, you could have live dialogue saying what's good, what's bad, whatever, during the service. But God's gifted a lot of people with the ability to preach and teach. And you may not know this, but the body, the church, is healthiest when people have platforms to use their gifts to bless other people. So by coming together and by having local churches, if you go to church, like your church, First Baptist this, or Presbyterian this, or Episcopal this, or Holiness this, or like your local church, preaching and teaching could be done online. Dialogue could be done online. But for as many people as possible to be able to use their gifts to encourage the body, to encourage the church, going to church is sort of necessary for that. So where does that leave us? Online church can be church. Because if online there's a community of people that are following Jesus and are being encouraged and are growing and are dialoguing, like it or not, that's church. In fact, I love that's great. So if you're part of an online church, what I would think would be really cool to do to supplement that would say this, is every once in a while, get together with a few followers of Jesus and at least like drink coffee together and talk about life. So that you're not isolated. And maybe after you drink some coffee and talk about life, y'all together go out and find a way to serve some people. Because then I can't think of any more authentic way to be a follower of Jesus than to get great teaching, encouragement, and to do that. If you physically in 2019 get up and you go to a service, I think that's great. And I want you to know, I think that's great because, and when you go, realize you're not just going to be given to, you're not just going to be fed, but to encourage other people. You have the ability to encourage other people in person, so take advantage of it. So is going to church necessary, like to go to heaven? No, absolutely no. Is it necessary to physically go to church to be a follower of Jesus? No. Is it necessary to go to church, physically go to a church service to get great teaching? No. So you can do all that, that you don't have to go somewhere. Is it necessary to go physically to be able to encourage people in person and serve them in person? Yes. So if you physically go to a church service, then I'm going to encourage you to take advantage of it and make the most of it. And let's be the body. So Jesus said we're called to charge the gates of hell, and make a difference and see things that were dead come alive and captives set free. So let's do that. Whether you're online or whether you go in person, man, let's be the committed followers of Jesus that set the world on fire with the good news and hope and forgiveness and message of peace and reconciliation between God and man that comes through the cross of Jesus. Y'all have a good one.